no matter where you're from, a sword is never going to be any match for a gun. That's just common sense. So thanks a lot for coming along today. As Brian mentioned, I am Brett and I work for Microsoft. I'm actually in the small medium business team, but my role is to really work more so with our fantastic partners like Insight and help work with them on growing their business and helping them enable their customers through Microsoft's cloud technologies, right? And so that's things like Microsoft Office 365, Microsoft Azure, or CRM Online, all right? Today we're obviously going to focus on our good friends Office 365. But before we kick off, what I'm going to do is go through some of those key industry trends, as Brian said, and then we're going to dive into the product, right? It's talking about how those industry trends have kind of influenced the product that Office 365 has become. But then, me being me, I much prefer to show how these features kind of work. So I'm going to be doing quite a few demonstrations on some of those core features of Office 365 that you might not be 100% familiar with what they are and what they do, right? And I normally find that's the best way to kind of show this stuff off. So that's what we're going to do. But before we kick off, just going to see a show of hands. This is quite similar to the old sword analogy, but is anyone using any of these products that you see on screen right now still in their day-to-day lives? Yeah? Anyone, what about the old 56K modem? Anyone using that as their primary driver to get online and connect to the internet? I remember those awful noises it used to make as it kind of kicked and screamed almost as it was getting pulled online. It was just an amazing thing, and it's just made it wasn't so long ago. What about Discman? Anyone strapping one of them to their arms before they hit the gym? No, I wouldn't think so. You probably have a few issues with it skipping. I feel bad putting, talking ill of the Discman, because I loved my Discman at the time. Back in the day, it was, real important to me. I love music, but it's just there's such a better way for me to carry my music around. I used to have my CDs and one of those little flipping things and all that sort of stuff. But I just, we don't use CDs anymore because there's just a better way of doing things. What about Encyclopedia Britannica? Anyone rushing to the bookshelf? Right? Just books in general. Yeah? Anyone go to books if you want to try and find out a little bit of information? Yeah, sometimes. Fantastic. And there's of course everything hasn't been completely superseded, but generally people are going online now to find this out there information. Things like Wikipedia, have kind of come out and just change the way that we kind of go and think about how we're going to find out bits of information. So it's quite interesting because we kind of, concluded that we would never really use any of this technology in our personal lives anymore, right? It's just not something we'd even consider using. And it's really quite amazing in Australia and all around the world, the amount of businesses that kind of still power their business on technology from this bygone era. 2003 to 2005, that sort of era, things like Windows XP, Office 2003, Windows Server 2003. Those were fantastic products at the time, as these were, right? But there's a much better way of doing things. Things have changed a lot since, say, 2001, 2003 to now, right? The world is a very different place, and let's have a quick look at some of those changes. So, in 2000 and let's double check. So currently, the global internet population stands at about 2.4 billion, right? Anyone want to have a stab at how much it was in 2001? No, roll.
0.5.
Half a billion.
0.5, that's actually 500 million, right? So very good, right? So there's now 5 times more many people online connected than there was back in 2001. So the way that technology companies like Microsoft design their products, right, are always going to be designed now to assume that everything is connected, everyone is connected, everyone has access to the internet. So that's a kind of key change. So now that we're all online, we're all connected, right? We've got this amazing, desire to have every single device we possibly own to leverage that infrastructure, to leverage that, connectivity. So currently, there are 1.4 billion internet-connected smartphones and tablets and counting, right? This is actually 2 years ago. I probably need to update that. That could very well be 3 billion now, the rate of these things going out the door. But how many do you think there were back in 2001?
Zero.
If you're thinking none, you're right? We didn't really use our phones to connect to the internet back then. We used them to make phone calls, text messages, and if you mean playing the odd game of Snake, right? That was basically what we used our phones for. So now that we're all online, right? We've all got these mobile devices that we can access online. We've got this amazing, desire to use cloud services, services that we can kind of access online. And a good example of those is something like a social network, okay? And A social network is actually a cloud service, right? If you think about it, there's a server somewhere that we are uploading information to, and we are accessing it through our other endpoint devices, be they phones, tablets, smartphones. So currently there's 1 billion plus Facebook users. Anyone have a stab at how many were back in 2001? 0, yes. Someone seen the movie. So no, no one used Facebook. So it's quite amazing that this has come fundamentally change the way that we communicate digitally in our personal lives, and really been that kind of cloud service that we all seem to be using and uploading things to all the time. And while we're on the subject of uploading things, there is currently 2.5 zettabytes of data up there in the cloud, right? So does anyone know what a zettabyte is? What about the IT people in the back? Anyone know what a zettabyte is? I didn't know that, don't worry. It's about 1 trillion gigabytes, right? So there's the amount of data that's getting created and captured and uploaded and shared and all that sort of stuff, be it corporate data, be it personal data, be it photos, be it anything, it is truly remarkable, right? So there is just so much stuff up there online. Now I tried to find back in 2001, and we didn't keep tabs on it then, right? So as far back I could run as 2005, right, where there was only 0.1 zettabytes, right? So just an absolute data explosion, and that is just continuing to explode, continuing to accelerate at a truly remarkable fashion. So, what does all that mean, right? And how do we kind of class those kind of 4 key changes as kind of, examples of trends? And in IT, they kind of call them the 4 key megatrends of technology, right? These are the things that are really driving change in the way that people use and consume technology in businesses, both large and small, right? And as a byproduct of that, changing the way people like Microsoft design and think about the way they design their products, right? We are now designing our products to enable these 4 key megatrends. Now cloud, surprise, surprise, I'm sure you're all falling off your seats surprised that cloud is going to be a key megatrend that we're going to discuss at an Office 365 seminar. But cloud really is the key one there, it's the main one. I actually think that cloud is enabling all those other ones that you see around it, right? If you don't have cloud, you don't have those 3 other key megatrends. And it's doing a number of things. First of all, I think, and I work more in small and medium business, but it's the case in large business as well. It is really giving businesses access to technology, right? That in the past they didn't really think about have access to, whether it's a budget reason or whether it's an infrastructure reason or whatever the reason may be. Cloud kind of levels the playing field and allows people to subscribe to technology and not worry about all the upfront costs that come along with the licensing and the infrastructure and kind of all those things that go along with it. So it's kind of giving businesses access to technology that in the past they probably didn't have access to. Following on from that, it's also allowing businesses, large and small, to be a lot more agile and nimble, right? And this is the kind of key one that I hear from customers all the time. It's something that's very important to them. And it's this notion of being able to scale up and scale down and go after new opportunities and not worry about how the IT infrastructure is set up and structured. They can put on people for 10 users and they can all be set up with an email account and an office, and all that sort of stuff, and then scale that back when they need to, right? They can have their server technology there if that's hosted in the cloud and go, right, we need to make that server stronger because we're opening up a pop-up store in the city over the Christmas period, and we need to have more infrastructural grunt based on that. So you can kind of scale things up, scale things down, and really use what they need at that particular point in time. So with that, it makes everyone kind of a bit more agile and flexible. And then following on from that, right, as I said before, it's kind of really enabling those 3 other key megatrends. Mobility is obviously a pretty key one there, right? Microsoft if you follow Microsoft much and hear our CEO Satya Nadella talk, he always talks about this cloud-first, mobile-first world, right? And that's not to say that Microsoft is cloud-first, mobile-first. We didn't create cloud-first, mobile-first. That is an example of what the world is, right? We now live in a world that is driven by the cloud, and as a byproduct of that, people are inherently mobile because of the cloud, right? That is the environment that we live in. And Microsoft's role in that world, our kind of desire, is to be the productivity and platform company to enable people to be productive in this cloud-first, mobile-first world. So that is Microsoft's DNA. That is every type of product that Microsoft is trying to create is assuming and knows that the environment we're in is this cloud-first, mobile-first world. And when we talk about mobility, Obviously that wouldn't be possible without the cloud, right? There's no point in having a phone, right, that you have to do work if you don't have access to, the data that you need to gain access to, and you don't want to have multiple versions of the data on all the different devices, right? So that's just one example of how the cloud kind of enables it. There's other examples of giving it access to line of business applications that might be running in a server somewhere, etc. So the cloud really makes people be mobile, and this whole notion of mobility is kind of changing what we think of work, right? Work is no longer, this thing that we do, right? Or place that we go, from 9 to 5, it's something that we do. And when we do it, and how we do it, and what device we do it, all those things are increasingly changing, as we become more mobile thanks to the cloud. Then we label these other two, right? And these are kind of interesting ones, and it took me a while to kind of really wrap my head around why they were kind of as important, as these 4 key megatrends that we see on the screen right now. Let's talk about social for 2 seconds. And we saw that, the rise of Facebook and all those sorts of things. And we have a look at how people, particularly people in the Generation Y industry, look how they communicate digitally, right? They don't do it through email. They don't email someone from their Gmail account to this person's Yahoo account saying, hey, let's just chat about something, right? The only reason they have these email addresses really is because it's their username for their social network account. So if they're going to communicate digitally with their audience and their friends and their community, they normally do through social networks. And as that workforce comes into, that generation comes into the workforce, we're seeing this increasing trend that they adapt a lot better and find it a lot more comfortable to communicate through something like a social network within an organisation, right? So that's a kind of key trend there, and it took me a little while to kind of really get my head around the benefits of that, and we have this product called Yammer, okay? And Yammer comes as part of Office 365, and think of Yammer as kind of like a Facebook, but controlled by by your corporate IT department, or by however you want to set it up. So you can restrict access, you can restrict who looks at things, you can create certain groups. You basically have that extra level of security around what is effectively a social network that can make posts and do likes and set groups and do all those sorts of things, right? So that's what Yammer is. And my story as to when I kind of realised that this is actually a really powerful thing to be able to change the way we communicate in here was, I needed to find out a certain bit of information about a certain product, right? And everything inside of me was telling me, hey Brett, to find that information, you go to your Outlook, right? You press new, you type in the product manager's email address, and then you type a message, you press send, and you wait for about 2 days before that product manager sees the email, comes back and sends it back to you, right? So, I got started doing that, and I suddenly thought, I can't be the only one that's had this question before, right? Someone must have had this, in the past. So I thought, hang on a second, we've got this Yammer thing, so let's jump onto Yammer, right? Click on the search engine, right, the little search bar at the top there, and just type that question, press enter. Sure enough, that same product manager 2 months ago had answered that same question, okay, to another person in the business, right? But because it was asked in that particular medium, I was able to reference it and source it, right? It wasn't just a conversation that occurred between him and locked away into kind of, email accounts. It was something that could be referenced and sourced by other people in the organisation. And I got the answer in literally 30 seconds as opposed to 2 days, right? So that's a pretty big game changer when it comes to things. So not only is it a way that the Gen Ys tend to like to communicate from a digital point of view, has some very real benefits to actually make yourselves more efficient, more effective, right? Because, as I said, that content becomes discoverable. Then there's big data, and I'm actually going to demonstrate a little bit of a thing on big data and show you how Office 365 and SharePoint Online with a few other little products can do something and bring big data to life. And big data is this notion or this idea that we saw there 2.5 zettabytes of information that are up there in the cloud, which is a staggering number. But even businesses, I'm sure in your businesses, you have so much data that is available to you, right? Whether it's your financial data, your inventory data, your customer data, external data that you've got through some marketing agency, etc., etc., etc. There's so much data that is out there, right? And this idea of big data is being able to get tools, okay, to be able to decipher that data, right, and present it in meaningful information to help you make business decisions, right? This is this whole notion of what big data kind of is. And in the past, big data was a really expensive exercise. You know, it was kind of reserved to big businesses with big budgets and all these sorts of things because, you know, a big Oracle or IBM or even a Microsoft SQL Server solution required expensive hardware and expensive licensing, and this is very much where the cloud kind of comes in, right? So using the cloud infrastructure and using the subscription licensing type to go across with a lot of software you consume in the cloud means that businesses large and small can get access to some really, really powerful, cool business, you know, data crunching tools, and we'll have a look at that in one of the demonstrations. But these are these 4 key megatrends, right? And as I said before, a lot of these are kind of really being driven by these guys, okay? You know, this Generation Y, you know, and I can speak to this because I am one of them, right? I'm an old one, but I still am in that kind of Gen Y bucket. And these guys are the fastest growing segment within the workforce today, right? It's just, you know, it's just common sense. And by 2020, they will be the largest segment, right? The largest segment in the workforce, in the Australian workforce and around the world will be people from this era. And as I said before, these people, they've grown up with technology, okay? They have a different expectation as to what they would get out of technology when they go into the workforce because the technology they use in their personal life is just being very, very strong. Do you know what I mean? These guys are all using fancy phones, they're all consuming cloud services, free cloud services, right, through the internet. So they're using social networks and doing all these sorts of things, and when they come into an organisation and they're very restricted by how, you know, the things that they can do because of the, you know, control and all that sort of stuff that inherently comes along with IT systems, they start to kind of get frustrated. And what they do is they circumnavigate, right? And this is something that we see all the time. And a good example of this is something like Dropbox, okay? And Dropbox is a great solution, right? Don't get me wrong, it's a cloud file storage solution that does a very good job of what it sets out to do. But most of the time, that wasn't a solution that was necessarily sanctioned by an IT department or introduced by an IT company. It was because, you know, the 18-year-old snowboarder in the mailroom decided he needed to send a big file and had to shoot because he wasn't able to send it because of some mail restriction. Okay, so he goes, hang on a second, you know, in uni we use this fantastic thing called Dropbox, and he goes ahead and sets it up, and bang, all of a sudden that becomes a new line of business application, right, within the company. And I do a lot of presentations, and I ask everyone who's using Dropbox kind of today, and a lot of people put their hand up, and then I ask, put your hand up if you're paying for that Dropbox subscription, right? And most of the hands go down, right? And that tells me one thing. It tells me that although Dropbox does have a paid solution, right, which is their Dropbox for Business product, right, most of the time it's just something they just use the free consumer version of Dropbox, right, because it does similar stuff. But the problem with it is it doesn't have that extra layer of IT control that sits on top of it, okay? So that if, you know, John from accounts gets fired because John is dodgy, right, and he has files stored in his personal Dropbox account that he went and set up, the license agreement is between Dropbox and him. Okay, and there's no way that the organisation or anyone can go, hey, we are going to grab that information and kind of come, and we need it to come back, or we need to change the passwords or anything, because that's John's Dropbox account, right? He's also got his family photos, he's got his personal documents, he's kind of got all these things kind of in there, and it's not an IT-controlled asset or a company-controlled asset. So that's it. So I'm not criticising Dropbox. As I said, it does the thing, and they have a paid service. But the message is more, this generation is very willing to bypass, you know, certain setups that you have if they feel their needs aren't being met. So I guess the key message there is to how can we enable, you know, these people to work the way they want to with modern solutions, not those kind of old school ones that we had at the beginning. So that kind of leads us to Office 365, right? That kind of leads us to what Microsoft does about this. And what I want to talk about now is going to be quite high level, right? You can talk about Office 365, you can go deep and you can have technical discussions, and we're going to move on to more technical stuff afterwards, but this is going to be a real high level of what Office 365 is, right? What are those key features and how do they enable mobility with big data and some of these other things, right? If you want to go deeper on any certain topic, we're happy to organise any type of session that you kind of would want. But the way I talk about Office 365 from that high level point of view is these applications that you see on screen right now, right? Office, you know, pretty common product. I'm sure many of you, or all of you, kind of use it every single day. The people that make Office, right, out at Redmond and at Microsoft, they never really, you know, envisioned that this is the Microsoft productivity story. This is where it ends, right? These applications are certainly part of it, okay? But that was always intended. These people that make these applications also make some real key server technologies, okay, that sit in the back end that kind of all work together and all augment with these applications to make them more powerful, right? They're all designed to have these three server technologies working in unison with them. But it's really only one that ever gets deployed, which is Exchange, right? Just through that sheer necessity for something like email. So this is where the productivity story kind of looks like for a lot of companies, particularly small, medium businesses in Australia, is they kind of sit here with these Office applications and they have Exchange running their email. But much in the same way that Exchange makes a product like Outlook possible, right? So for those of you who don't know, Exchange is the email platform, okay? So this handles everyone's email. So that when you go onto your Outlook, okay, and you click open up your Outlook, it goes and has a look at the server, right, and sees the mail, sees the contacts, sees the calendars, and sends that information to Outlook, right? That's why when you get on your phone, okay, it's doing the same thing. It goes, has a look at the mail, and it says, does this have any mail, blah, 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 and that same thing is mirrored there, right? That's just the whole idea of cloud. So even a server on premise is kind of like a cloud. But much in the same way that Outlook communicates with Exchange, you know, it and all those other applications communicate and integrate very well with, you know, a couple of other key server technologies that really work together to enable those key industry trends that we talked about at the beginning, particularly mobility and big data and social, right? So that is how, realistically, Office was always intended to be consumed, right? With all those things together. But as we said, very few people actually have them all together because in the past, you know, to sell that one type of SKU with all the server technology and all the licensing and all that stuff that went across along with it was just too expensive. You know, one big SKU for like 40 grand, you know, it was just not a really marketable type of product. But that's where Office 365 comes in, and that's where the cloud comes in, okay? So by moving these server technologies into Microsoft's cloud and bundling them with the Office applications that you see on screen right now, that's effectively what Office 365 is, all right? It's these server technologies delivered as a service from Microsoft's servers bundled with those Office applications. And it's continued to grow from there, right? So this is where it kind of started, but then there's a whole stack of other services like Yammer that I talked about before, which is that social network. You know, that's a different thing as well. There's just launched Office 365 Video, okay, which is kind of like, think of it almost as a YouTube for business, okay, where businesses can create their own videos that they can very easily upload. So think training videos, think, you know, executive communication out to the staff, or people that are multi-sites organisations, and along with that, with those videos comes a lot of smarts that come from SharePoint, right? So the ability to say who's watched this video, have they clicked this button to say they understand it, can I get a report on who's done this, etc., etc. So you can kind of have some of that stuff to make sure that people have done that training and do those sorts of things. So that's just one example, but there is a myriad of other services that come with Office 365 that, again, we could go much deeper on, you know, if it's something that you're interested in, but they're the main ones that you see on the screen right now, right? So that's effectively what it is, right? This slide kind of really sums that up. So it is Microsoft's cloud productivity services hosted by Microsoft, okay? Enterprise quality tools at an affordable price. They're always up to date, right? And this is a kind of a real important one. So long gone are the days where you would be on Office 2003 and that's where you have to wait till you purchase that new version, okay? The Office updates come incrementally to Office when you're on Office 365. So you're slowly getting updates all the time and it's completely seamless, okay? There's no redeployment, none of that sort of stuff that goes along with it. They say you have an update, press go, bang, it happens in the background, okay? The end users won't even notice it happening. All of a sudden there'll be new features there, which if a fantastic partner, you know, Excite can tell you about those features and potentially show you those features and show how they can potentially, you know, change the way you're doing things. Because there are tons and tons of features that are coming out all the time. So following on from that, I mean, why would you choose to have something like Office 365? What are the benefits of it kind of being in the cloud? So first of all, there is that Office always up to date, okay, as I said, you know, so I'm not going to cover that again, but you know, your Office will always have the latest version, and that includes all your server technologies as well, so your Exchange, your Link, your SharePoint. Anytime there's a new feature or a new thing that comes to it, if you're on Office 365, you instantly get access to that. Now, the licensing on Office 365 is substantially more flexible than it has been in the past, and this is kind of in line with that whole mobility trend, right, where people do have multiple devices and you know, different ways of doing things. It's not the situation now where you buy one license and you can install Office on this machine and that's kind of where it's at, right? Anyone that has an Office 365 subscription can install Office on 5 different machines, okay? 5 different PCs or Macs, okay? So it could be their work PC, it could be their Mac at home, it could be 3 other PCs. I don't know many people that do have 3 computers, but apparently there are some, right? So we are, Microsoft, with Office 365, enables those people to all have access to Office on all of them. Following on from that, there's some fantastic tablet applications for Android and iOS or iPads, right? There's mobile phone applications across all those platforms. And your question about iPhone 6 compatibility with Office, was that related to the actual Office on the iPhone?
Prospectively. I don't use Office on the iPhone.
Yeah.
So I want to use Outlook on the iPhone. That's the problem.
Okay. So calendars, yeah. So calendar absolutely is the Exchange Online portion of it, right? And from all accounts I've heard, that works very, very well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Office, I get a little bit, my nose out of joint because the Office experience on the iPhone is currently better than it is on the Windows phone at the moment, right? That's going to change very, very soon when Windows 10 gets launched. We're not talking about Windows 10 now, but at the moment, the Office applications that you can install on your phone, right, work really well. And I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration about how you use your mobile with something like Office and some of those key benefits to why you would do that. But the Office experience is fantastic across all the different mobile platforms, be it Android, be it iOS, etc., etc. And they, with an Office 365 subscription, they're enabled to use it across all those platforms as well. The next stuff I'm going to demonstrate. Now the point here is that all these services work together, right? So there's a lot of companies out there that do similar things. They do email and they do unified communications or file sharing and collaboration. I guess the real benefit of something like Office 365 and the fact that it's all made by Microsoft is all those three things with those Office applications are designed to work together, right? They're all integrated very, very tightly, and I hope you can get some of that out of the demonstrations that I do. Of course, there's no service to set up because all the servers get hosted, in Microsoft's data center. And working with your IT partners like Excite, it's a lot easier to be able to go ahead and fix and remedy any type of problems. Do you know what I mean? So if you have a problem with your mail server, chances are Microsoft is going to very easily be able to fix that because A, they've written software that runs Exchange, and B, they are hosting it in their servers. So the downtime is substantially reduced compared from a statistic point of view to an on-premise mail server. So it's got a guaranteed 99.9% uptime, on concurrent reports. They'll never say 100% just in case, but 99.9% is pretty good. If it does go down, there is financially backed SLAs, okay? So they will refund you for the time when it goes down, but they're obviously incredibly confident based on that 99.9% uptime. So that is that. Now, we're going to probably touch on security at the end, okay? And we can dive a little bit deeper into that after we do the demonstrations. But one of the big key things that happened in this country for Office 365, probably about literally 2 weeks ago, right? So this is how the pace at which things changed, is data centres, right, have opened up here in Australia, meaning that when you are an Office 365 customer, your data is housed in data centres that are right here in Australia, okay? So your data actually never leaves the country. So there's data centres in some secret location here in Sydney, right, and in Melbourne, right, and they are geo-redundant with each other. So, they back up with each other, and let's say some terrible thing happens to this data centre, like an explosion, the data is obviously also there in Melbourne. But the point is, Australia is actually one of 2 markets in which the data doesn't actually leave the country, right? So it's Australia and Japan. So really, really good, support, and we're all very happy for Microsoft that we can say that from an Australian point of view. But it's a very good news story when it comes to saying Australia. So from a data point of view, that's fantastic. And Office 365 is the fastest growing product in Microsoft's history, right? And in a company that's had as many fast growing products as Microsoft, that's a pretty impressive feat. And even in this country as well, when the data was hosted in Singapore, okay? So I think customers and people I speak to have come a little bit further from this whole, I'm worried that my data is going to be in Singapore. And so I guess one of the key benefits of it being here in Australia is just latency, do you know what I mean? When the server is located right here, everything is going to run much smoother, much nicer, video conferencing, sharing screens, all that sort of stuff. It's just going to be a fantastic experience because we've got the data centers in our backyard. We'll go more into security, right, in our Q&A. Right? I'm just conscious that I'm probably running over here and I want to try and get going on demos. So let's have a quick look at some of those demonstrations, okay? I always find the easiest way to kind of show us some of these features is to be able to do that. So you can see what I see. Now, I do precursor this by saying that working with live technology is a little bit like working with animals in show business. Okay, you never quite know if it's going to behave itself, but we can all pray and hope that it does. All right, so we're going to start off here with in Outlook, right? Pretty common product. I'm sure many of you use it, all day, every day. And as I said before, Outlook is communicating here with my Exchange server, right? It is communicating, it's getting my emails, it's getting my contacts, getting my calendars, it's keeping all that in sync. But the other piece of Office 365 technology that it's communicating with is my Link, right? And I should have said this, right? This happened literally yesterday, that Link, the product, has rebranded itself to Skype for Business, okay? So the new name for Link as a product is called Skype for Business, which is great, because if anyone said to me, what's Link? I kind of say it's kind of like Skype for Business, right? So that kind of saves me the hassle. It's now called Skype for Business, that's what the product is called. So if I do refer to it as Link, I'm sorry, all habits die young, we'll eventually get there. But you can see it's communicating with my Skype for Business, because here's my colleague Robin that sent me the email, and you can see that little indicator bar right next to her name, okay? That is telling me her presence information, right? And so that is telling me when it's amber that she is awake, okay? So she hasn't been typing on her device or any of that sort of stuff that has Link on it in the last kind of 10 minutes, okay? So that might change the way that I respond to this email, right? If she was green, right, it means that she's at a computer and she's working, in which case I might decide to hover over, right? And I'll go ahead and just click on, send an instant message, and we'd instantly fire up an instant messaging conversation via Skype for Business, okay? But the important thing is we've done all that from Outlook, okay? We didn't actually open up Skype for Business, which was a separate, application. It was all integrated into that email experience. If she was red, okay, it's going to mean that she is in a meeting, okay? And I can hover over and see how long until she's out of that meeting. And the way that I know she's in a meeting is it's read her Exchange calendar, right? So, all this stuff kind of happens automatically because it's also tightly kind of integrated with each other. All right, but what we also have with these things is the fact that they are available on all the mobile platforms, okay? So right now I wanted to show you that even though Robin, right, I know she's away and I would normally reply to her email, but I know that Robin is notoriously bad with responding to email. So I'm going to try and IM her anyway, because I know that she has an instant message as Link on her mobile device, right? I know she's just at the cafeteria getting a coffee. So I'm going to go like that. I'm just going to try and send her an instant message. And what's going to happen if you quickly look at my phone here is I've almost received like a text message, okay, that's come through, but it's actually a Link message. So it's going to open up fire up Link, or soon to be rebranded Skype for Business on the mobile application, and we're going to go ahead and just get into an instant messaging conversation. Hopefully.
Can I ask a question while
Sure.
you're waiting for that? Is that only with people within your organisation or anyone who's on Office 365?
Yeah, so you can, what you can do is you can federate your organisation, okay, with your partner organisations or with whoever you want, okay? So, because you might not want everyone to have that level of, interact to see what your presence is, right? But so you can set it up through your IT partner, and they just get a couple of domain names and then sync you up, and then all of a sudden you can see their presence information, right? So yes. Sorry, I'm just quick. What is happening? All right. So there's my message. I'm going to go like this, and I'm going to respond back saying hi. Right. So now we're basically in an instant messaging conversation, right? That started off as an email. From there, you might decide, hey, this is great, but the person who can really add some more value to this conversation might be my other colleague, Alex Darrow, right? So I can just drag him into the conversation. I can just keep dragging people in, and whatever device they're on, be it their iPad, be it their Android phone, be it their PC, be it their Mac, will start indicating that they want to, that we want some of their attention to become part of, the three-way, four-way IM conversation. From there, we might decide, hey, we're not really getting anywhere here, so I'm going to go and turn this into a Skype call, right? Now what's going to happen with the phone, hopefully you can see that okay. Come on. I do apologise about that. Very rarely does it not work for me. So it looks like it's going to be one of those days. working. I don't know if it's something to do with the integration of swap over to Skype for Business, but what normally happens is that phone would ring, okay? And it would answer a thing and I'd be having a link conversation, all right, with her. From there, what I normally like to show is we can drag people in, and again, that'll become a three-way conference call, but the real impressive thing I like to show is from there I can share my desktop, okay? So I can choose to share my screen from my computer, okay? And whatever mobile device they're on will be able to see that particular PowerPoint presentation or see that particular Word document or whatever it was we were trying to go ahead and collaborate on, okay? So, you know, you can share your screens across mobile platforms, right, and do that all from this one kind of consolidated interface. So that's my part that I love to demo the most, so I'm going to throw this computer against the wall when I get out of here, so I do apologise for that. It normally works seamlessly, and I highly encourage you if you get a demo of Office 365 to try that out, because it really has changed it. Yesterday I was in Brisbane at the airport, right, and I needed to join into a meeting, okay, so I just dialed in, I'm on the airport Wi-Fi, no problem, I'm on my phone with my headphones in, bang, I can hear them talking, I can see the slides transitioning, I can, do all those sorts of things. So it is a really, really, really great experience to be able to do that from your phone.